Peace, family. Welcome to another episode of Underground Railroad Radio. This is your host, Brother Rich, and I'm back in the building with Minister Ju and Noble Anpu. What's happening, brothers?
Hey, what's happening, Rich?
What's going on, bro?
Well, I'm chilling, brothers. Good to have y'all, the priesthood, back in the building today. I'm on the show. I want to talk about a subject, healing, today, but not just healing. I want to talk about quantum healing today. Last time y'all did a great show on the quantum world, and we was talking about Charleston and all that. I got a real good response from the people for it, so they definitely want to hear some more the quantum Helix dealing with other areas in life. Now, with quantum healing, well, first of all, I guess to start out with, tell the people exactly what is quantum healing for those who may not know.
Okay. I'll go first, Rich, and excuse me if I get long-winded, man. I try to answer, but then I got a diatribe I want to go through. In essence, on how I define quantum, period, is the possibility of every single thing that you can possibly think of, period, point blank, period. To me, it is actually the deepest aspect of, if you believe in a God, God's mind. And when you start looking at certain things in nature, from the electric eel, which is supposed to be an impossibility, electricity and water don't mix, to one of my favorites, which is a rainbow jelly, who you can see straight through it, you will start to see, if you make an observation in nature, you will start to see the beauty of what we call God's mind. So in the aspect of quantum healing, to answer it, it is the ability to heal instantaneously by the power of your thoughts. I want to be real clear about that. It's the power of your thoughts that actually heal. I'm not talking about medicine. I ain't talking about herbs. I'm talking about literally the power of what we call your belief is the aspect of quantum I'll be getting into. And it's possible, and people know about the, if you don't know, you can study the just one aspect of nature. The starfish and also the Medusa jellyfish are two beings that if you injure it, it'll literally, for the Medusa, it'll go back to the bottom of the ocean and turn back into a baby and grow back into an adult again. This is a mere jellyfish. Your brain is way 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times more powerful than a damn jellyfish. You know what I'm saying? So, but the quantum healing on the aspect is going to be talking about the power to heal yourself with your thoughts.
You got anything to say, Minister Ju, or?
I totally agree with that. It's the ability to understand that there's unlimited probabilities and possibilities, including health and including the opposite of health, which is disease, which are all possibilities. Everything is open and everything's available in the quantum world. It just depends upon how you make the observation internally. And when we get to my aspect of the build, I'm going to end up talking about subjective light, again, in subjective imagery, and also show the corresponding principles to photonic light and the actual spectrum of light that we live in, to show how this thing is twofold, where you can see it actually operating externally and the miracles of how it operates when you start to delve into it internally, into your inner. So I totally agree 100% with what Noble Anpu just said.
Now, in terms of healing, people have, it's a huge market. The health market is a huge market. There's all types of products in every known community imaginable, whether you're into Santeria, whether you're in the herbs, whether you're in the medicine, whatever you're into, there's a market out there for people to heal. And people, for ages, some people have said, yo, this works for me. Other people say, man, that's bullshit. So I guess my question would be, why is it that? Because some people say it's not the actual thing that's healing the person, it's the person's belief in that thing. So I want to get your take on that, and why is it that certain things, because I have people that have used Dr. Sadie's pills before and say, oh, man, that's the best thing on the face of the earth. Some people have used them and say, nah, it didn't really work for me, man. I don't know what's up with it. So why aren't some things working for some, not working for some people, but yet working for the others?
It's real simple, and you said it. It is belief. It is your mental state on which you believe at the core, if it's going to work for you, if it's not going to work for you, period. And of course, environment has everything to do with it as well. But again, environment don't do anything. It's really your perception, which we're going to get into, of the environment. So if you got a lot of things going on, you're stressed out, you're paying bills, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and you kind of on the fence if it's going to work, and you're not really sure, and this is just an alternative, and this herb is not as powerful as medicine. All of these things are mental factors that boil down to your perception, which is your belief, which is going to turn it on or off. So it's real simple, and we'll get into it a little later on the actual proof of how your thoughts are actually controlling this reality called your health.
Now, in terms of health and disease, how is it that, why do you think, because a lot of people tie emotions into it. You know, some people say, let's talk about laughter. Let's talk about laughter. How can an emotion like laughter cure disease? I remember when I was younger and I watched The Secret, and the lady was talking about how, you know, she just watched funny movies all day when she was sick, and that kind of boosted her immunity. Now, to the average person, that may sound kind of foolish. Laughter, how is laughter going to heal me? What is the science behind something as simple as laughter healing yourself?
Well, that's a great question. Laughter, we have to understand what's going on neurologically in our brains. When we try to understand what's happening at the core of our being. It's interesting you asked that question. Just earlier today, me and Anpu were discussing the movie Inside Out that just came out, the animation talking about how the brain actually works from inside out, and how what's going on inside of you internally is actually propelling you, your moods, your temperament, your actions in the external world. And you have a specific brain part in the left hemisphere of the brain called the amygdala on the left side, which synthesizes joy, happiness, laughter, these type of things. So when you start to engage in activity that stimulates the left amygdala, which is the most easiest tempted structure in the brain as far as electricity and blood flow is concerned, it is the most easily triggered. So it doesn't take much. What happens is when we start to feel joy and laughter, we start to secrete these chemicals that actually respond in a way where we feel better, right? So it's a neurological thing that triggers a chemical thing, and we start to just simply feel better, or our mental state has been removed from the current state of disaster or disease. It's just like when you if you have a certain part of your body is ailing, and then all of a sudden for the next hour your attention and focus is removed from that because something else more, let's just say interesting, or desires more of your attention pops up. That particular part of your body, you'll be like, man, I haven't felt no pain there for the last hour or two while you were doing something else, because simply your attention has been taken away from that particular part of your body, which suggests that wherever thought flows, energy goes. And when you can drive the current of thought, which Anpu is going to discuss, then you can change the physiological structure of your body, change the way that the cells operate, and light plays an extremely important role, because the left amygdala actually has the ability to produce what we would call subjective forms of light, right, where you actually, people have these visions of God, right, when they're going through these moments where these synaptic channels in their brain are firing all kind of ways. People have these visions of God, and they say they see this white luminous light, right? But this is the left amygdala function that's actually producing the light that the person is seeing internally in the imagery. So light externally and internally plays a major factor on our consciousness, our states of consciousness, and the physiology of the body.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hey, Rich. Let me ask you this real fast. Because I know you got them loaded. If we can, if you don't mind, because we got some material that we wanna blaze through, and if we can get through it, it'll really be great. You know what I mean? If you can say the questions towards the end and just segue it in there towards the end so we can get it out, because the stuff we got, and even like how Charles, we might need almost a part 2, and I definitely want to get it out because I'm gonna address this thing, the disease aspect and the state of mind from a place of the problem and going to the solution, and then Minister Ju gonna bring it on home with the light of the solution and keep on building. So I got the problem, and Ju got the solution to it. You see what I'm saying?
Sounds good to me. Go ahead, yo. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So this is what, and I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Not the Bogart. I'm just saying this is kind of like me and this dude talk a lot, like at least 5 times a day on science and God. And I asked Brother Rich, ladies and gentlemen, to put a picture up of me that's on this video of me having a violet flame over my head because we're talking about light. And that particular picture was taken on one of our various trips that we do. We take spiritual journeys 3 to 4 times a year, and we was over at Cahokia Mounds doing some powerful sun work. As you can see, we're at the sundial working with light itself. I got a purple shirt on, and my photographer ended up catching the violet flame coming from my head. If you Google violet flame and Saint Germain and all that stuff, you will see that this is a very well-known spiritual phenomenon that talks about a very high level of spiritual consciousness that deals with light. Just simply Google it and connect the dots and roll with us on that. I want to address the unconscious negative emotional addiction. I say it again, the unconscious, you're not aware, negative emotional addiction that most people have. And this unconscious negative emotional addiction ultimately leads to a lack of health and a lack of prosperity in a lot of areas of our life. Now, negative emotions are thoughts that you do not like, at least consciously. Nobody says, hey, I like negative emotions. So these are negative emotions, are thoughts that you do not like that triggers the brain to release stress chemicals, certain ones like adrenaline, certain ones like cortisol, into the bloodstream. These chemicals, in return, land on various organs. And when they land on the organ, you feel these chemicals, and this is the real definition of how I'm defining feelings. So in essence, please know that chemicals in your body, stress chemicals, produce feelings. You are a chemical factory, okay? Now, one of the ways that we're going to address of breaking this addiction is to understand the basic process of human thought and emotion. We address this in the workbook that we put together called The Mystic Brain, which you can see on My Astrology Coach on the books, The Mystic Brain Workbook. Me and the Prime Minister put it together just for this particular aspect so you can see how the brain works. So, see, once you understand how thoughts and emotions work, where they are generated at within your brain, you can then shut off the valve. That's very important. See, the major issue is we have negative thoughts and emotion. They're lodged in the subconscious mind, which is the part of the brain that runs everything without your conscious awareness. So things like saliva production, heart rate, temperature control, these things are on autopilot, and you must hijack your mind and take conscious control. So one good movie like the Prime Minister was just talking about, I seen it last night, I'm going to see it again tomorrow. You have to go watch this movie called Inside Out, little Disney Pixar joint. You got to watch this, all right? So what happens is your senses have incoming data, okay? The brain, for the most part, is a receptor, all right? Let me tell you like this. The brain is feminine on most part. Everything inside you, all your organs are yin-yang and yang-yin. It has a majority function, but it always has its counterbalance to it. The brain is a feminine component, all right? It receives incoming data called visual events that you see, it processes sound, okay? It processes scent, it processes feeling via touch, and it processes taste, okay? Of course, you can think of some things and turn it into the masculine component, but for the most part, this bad boy is a feminine aspect that's receiving data at all times. It processes things in literally no time, or what me and Ju call entanglement time. You better know, you know this as instantaneously, where absolutely no time happens, okay? Quantum physics is infatuated with the speed of light. But the truth is, we need to be studying the speed of thought. And they're yet to embark on that particular study. They don't understand that it's really your thoughts that's upholding this whole reality, which is a whole other subject. But this is where we need to be. And I'm not talking about the logistics of thought like in a traditional science. A simple, mere understanding and respect for your thought, and understand that thoughts are the most powerfulest thing in creation. And there is absolutely nothing more powerful than your thoughts and our collective thoughts, okay? I want y'all to know that. It's very important. Now, when you crack open the brain, there's something in there called the thalamus, right? This is really the true eye of Horus. It's not solely the pineal gland. We get stuck on, the pineal gland and visions, and that's true. However, it takes a certain process and level of consciousness to get there. The true eye that they're really talking about, and you can Google images stuff, the thalamus gland, eye of Horus. The eye is not the pineal. It's actually talking about the thalamus. When you understand what the thalamus job does, which I'm going to get into, its job is to simply direct visual, audio, touch, taste, not smell, which is totally interesting. Smell to get you on something else. But it directs all four senses, the information that's coming in. It says, okay, I need you to go here, you're going to go here, you're going to go here. So the thalamus gland, I want you to see it as a city traffic cop waving all events into your reality. It's telling you, hey, you need to go over here, the information this is over here. Come on, you next, come on. That's what it does. This is the all-seeing eye in your brain. Now, at the same time as information is coming into your brain, two other things come online, the hippocampus and the amygdala, who I call the Amy G. Dollar, okay, but it's the amygdala. Now, what's happening is as incoming info is coming into your brain, the hippocampus, whose job is to store memory, it searches for a historical physical record of the event. Hey, man, you hear the horn blowing? Okay, you need to look both ways, make sure you don't get hit. It's looking for a physical event in your mind to match the environment so you can know how to survive, okay? Now, at the same time, the amygdala is sitting there and it's saying, okay, I need to label this experience, this incoming experience, as either negative or positive. Stay with me. Now, at the same time, all of this is going on at the same time in less than a nanosecond. At the same time, the hippocampus is searching for a physical record called a memory. Orders are sent from the hippocampus to the hippocampus, from the hippocampus to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus job is to search for a chemical record of the event. Okay, so now you got a physical record called a memory, and now your memory, 9 times out of 10, is going to produce a feeling. But feelings, what precedes feelings? Chemicals. So now the hypothalamus, which is under, the hypothalamus job is to produce a chemical record of the event. So then, okay, so the hippocampus looks for this physical record called memory. The hypothalamus looks for a chemical record because the hypothalamus job, like I said, is just simply to make chemicals. Now, at the exact same time, but you got to understand, nothing processes faster than the speed of thought, okay? Now, at the exact same time, the hypothalamus sends a chemical record and say, oh, yeah, I got a chemical record of this. When you heard that horn, it made you jump. And when you had jump, that was adrenaline. So here go the chemical record. Okay, I need to send this chemical record down to the pituitary gland, known as the master gland. So the pituitary gland says, okay, I'm going to take this chemical, I'm going to chop and screw it, I'm going to remix it, I'm going to put the whoop-de-whoop on it. Okay, so now it's going to turn into a new chemical, and I'm going to dump this into the bloodstream. Now, when it gets dumped into the bloodstream, it's going to go down the throat where the thyroid is at. Now, the thyroid is interested in your throat because the thyroid in return decides how much juice you're going to get. In other words, this is your voltage regulator. In other words, when you get mad, what you do? I had to bass out on somebody, right? You raise your voice. So the throat, are you screaming at somebody, you lose your voice, you think it's just your vocal cords. No. That is your voltage regulator. And it's the same thing with stress chemicals. It's going to decide, in your throat, it's going to decide how much juice the body's going to get. Your throat is the true bridge between heaven and earth. Earth, your body, heaven, your head, okay? Now, the stress goes down to the adrenal glands, which sits on top of the kidneys. Now, the adrenal glands take this chemical and it mix it, do the same thing, remix it, chop and screw it, right? And then it dumps it into the kidneys, and then we start this process all over again, and I want y'all to Google this. It's called the HPA axis. Critically important for you to understand the process so you can consciously begin to not allow someone, which is really yourself, to turn it on. Because once it gets turned on and it stays on in overdrive, this is called disease. This is a problem. The HPA axis is known as the hypothalamus, which I said makes chemical. The pituitary, which is the P, makes another chemical. And the adrenal, which makes another chemical on top of your kidney. This is why when people have anger problems, they start having kidney issues, because the adrenal gland sits on top of the kidneys. They form this loop. It's the HPA axis. Understand that. Now, the body is so smart, it does something called upregulation. When the body is in a chronic state of stress, okay, the organ or area with the most stress, it develops something called daughter cells. In other words, these cells start to split, okay, and just duplicate themselves. They're designed to take in stress chemicals. This is their sole purpose. The body says, hey, this is a toxic environment down here. He's thinking all this crazy stuff. He's always stressed out. Therefore, I can't take it no more. I need to create some cells that's going to specifically take in this chemical because I love this body and love him so much. That's what happens, okay? So it creates these cells to take stress away. That's how intelligent you are. Now, when these daughter cells, known as the receptor sites, are where they're on the location of an organ, where the stress chemicals enter the organ, when these cells don't have any food called stress chemicals, what do you think they do? I'll tell you what they do. They do this. They get hungry, and they send a cellular signal, like a cell phone. They send a cellular signal to the adrenals. The adrenal sends a signal up to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland sends a signal to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus sends a signal to the hippocampus where the memory resides, and all of a sudden, you think, I know this mother effer ain't out cheating on me. I know he over there with his baby mama. That's how it happens. So it's a reverse process that comes up from the body back up to the brain. So the sudden thoughts about the bad things that happen that suddenly pop up in your awareness, this is your body. This is not your mind. Your body is craving a hit. But see, again, in our world, it comes home. It's like this. He comes home. He leaves the toilet seat up. He pee on the toilet. And the littlest thing that somebody do, you're ready to launch an attack. Because in essence, internally, your cells are sending a signal to the brain that needs you to fight. It needs stress, so you're unhappy. So the disease self can continue to exist. That's what happens. So thus you are addicted to the stress without consciously being aware of it. I'll tell you a true story about my father. He called me the other day on Father's Day. We had a conversation. He told me he didn't go down to the high school for the 40th year reunion or 30th year reunion or something. I said, why not, Dad? Why didn't you go? Because Mother Effers owed me some money, and I know I ain't going to get my money. I said, okay. And then we start talking about this book he got. Now, my pop's the kind of dude that if you owe him money, he got this ledger, and you had to sign off on it as an IOU, okay? Half these people in these books dead anyway. And, he's very upset about this. I call him right now, get him on the line. It's classic, right? It's real talk, you know what I'm saying? So some of these people dead anyway, you know what I'm saying? I said, well, Dad, well, if you're not going to take nobody to civil court, man, and you're mad that these people never paid you your money, you know what I'm saying? You always help people, and you ain't going to take them to civil court, why don't you just go ahead and throw the book away? No, man, no. The book ain't bothering me. They ain't going to do nothing. They ain't going to make me feel better. The book ain't, I said, if it ain't going to do nothing, then go ahead and throw it away then, since it ain't going to do nothing. No, I'll just be doing that to satisfy you. I said, no, you won't satisfy me. I'm all right. I said, but why don't you just go ahead and throw it away? Now, watch this, Rich. Here comes the ego. He said, well, no, it ain't doing nothing, man. It ain't causing me no harm. And plus, I got some good paper in there. I said, I'll tell you what. Then throw the sheets away with people's name on it and keep the paper. He said, no, I ain't. I said, you know why you can't do it, Dad? I said, I'm going to tell you why you can't do it. I said, because the truth of the matter is you're unconsciously addicted to your stress state. He's going through kidney failure and everything. Sometimes you're too close to people and you can't help them. That's just the truth of the matter. And you got to know your position. And I hope I can get into that as well. But, I'm like, see, throw the book away. You can't. I said, and before we talked about that, I said, I want you to think about what you're going to do tomorrow. Create your day, Dad. Create your day. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, man. I just live as the day comes. So when we talked about not throwing the book away, I said, you know why you couldn't think about what you're going to do tomorrow and make a better day for yourself? I said, because your body won't let you. I said, you need that book around to validate your existence of being mad. That book is your binky. That book is your pacifier. You need that, and you consciously, you won't admit it because he wouldn't do it, and nobody will. Raise your hand if you want to wake up and fight your girlfriend today, you want to fight your husband and wife. Nobody does it. But why do we go through the experience? You understand what I'm saying? Because there's a cellular energy inside of you that is craving a hit, okay? Now, let's talk about the conscious hijack on how you're going to get back in control of this thing. Now, notice when I talked about the brain parts that determine your original perception. See, there's nothing in the brain, rather. There's nothing in the brain that determines your perception. The amygdala's job is to associate an incoming experience and charge it with, oh, this is bad. Oh, this is negative. But it can only do that based off your perception of the reality. Once it does that, it then stores the hippocampus say, okay, well, this is a messed up memory. This is bad. Or this is a great memory. Okay? And y'all got to see that movie because this is what this thing is talking about. Now, for example, my daughter don't like bugs. And I'm thinking, like, where the heck did she get that from? She never had a bad experience with bugs. But it's the typical, you know how women is with bugs? Right? You're like, where did y'all get that from? It's learned behavior. So there's a study that was dealing with a child can naturally swim. We come from water. If you have birth inside of a pool, that child would naturally come out and swim naturally. But when children get older and you take them by the pool, the first thing you do is you run and you go get them out of fear because you don't want them to drown. Out of fear, you run and you go take them away from the pool. And now that young child is subconsciously and consciously processing this pool as danger. So when they grow up, they don't want to swim. They're afraid to death to know how to swim, which baffles me how grown people can't swim when your body naturally floats in water. It is the most craziest thing in the world. Anyway, so this was a classic riddle behind the tree of life in Scripture because it had no duality, not the tree of life. The tree of knowledge had good and evil, but it also had one more thing added to it. Notice how the tree of knowledge had good and evil, which is duality, but once you perceive the evil and the bad and the stress, the good and bad and all that stuff, you will surely die. See, it wasn't the tree of life and death and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It was like, no, the tree of life by itself, it's all life over here. Then when you get into the science of knowing what is good and what is bad, you're about to die. What were they actually talking about? They was talking about your perception of this reality, and once you classify something as negative, bad, stressed out, you don't like it, that's what happens. If you see that happening, if you see it occurring in your reality, you get stressed out over something because you don't like it, all right, because you classified it as bad. And now if you stay in that particular state long enough, thus you will surely start to die. So your thoughts/emotions can also affect, on the positive side, your thoughts and your emotions can affect light and DNA. I'll give you some quick homework assignments, all right? One is called Look Up DNA Phantom Effect, which basically states that some Russian scientists were studying DNA and light. They took light, some photons, which are messenger particles from the sun. They took photons and put it in a tube, and they knew the photons was going to do what they do inside of the tube. What they're going to do? They're just going to act crazy and move around and do what they do. Okay, no problem. They put DNA inside of the tube. They thought the photons would see what the photons do. Maybe they'd still be moving around like they're crazy. The actual photons actually took on the form of DNA. Said, okay, no problem. So now DNA, or light rather, responds to DNA. Light responds to DNA, not necessarily DNA responding to light. Okay? Nobody never talks about this. It's always as above, so below, but nobody ever says so below as above. You can actually affect the cosmos. Don't you know that black hole, it's a black hole that just went off not too long ago in the cosmos up in the Cygnus constellation that got everything to do with this Charleston, South Carolina stuff, and Rick Ross going to jail? Literally. But we'll tie that whole connection in something else either, in something else. But my point is, when they took the DNA out of the tube, they said, okay, these photons are about to actually start going back and doing what they was doing, minding their business. No, it didn't. Those photons said, nope, I am staying in the form of DNA. So now DNA affects light. It's called the DNA phantom effect. Now, also look up HeartMath. Rich, I know you know about HeartMath. People look up heartmath.com, heartmath.org. It's the same site. They did a study where they took DNA and put it in the beaker, right? Put it in the little glass scientist joint. And then they took the human beings and they held the beaker and they had to hold a positive intent, a positive emotion to see if they can affect the DNA. The studies checked out that they actually affected the DNA. Those who have what they call positive coherence or positive emotions actually made the DNA change the most, okay? You can look into that study, all right? Just go to HeartMath. They got tons of information and historical proof on emotions and thoughts affecting DNA, all right? Now, what they also found out was stress contracts the DNA helix. It makes sense because when you're stressed out, what you do, you may cross your arms. You don't want to hug nobody. You want to be, you closed off. You tight. That's the constriction. Your eyebrows get tight and that little bulge in the middle of your eyes big up. You know what I'm saying? You get tight. So you start to constrict your DNA when you do that. Very dangerous. All right. Now, the opposite of that, love expands. What happens when you're in a loving mood? You smile. What is a smile? Ain't nothing more than a facial expansion. Your lips expand on your face. That's all it is. There's expansion in love. You want to hug somebody. That means you open your arms, and when you open your arms, you open in your lungs. You open in the meridian systems when you do that as well. So love is expansion. It's real simple. Just pay attention to the human physiology of what we be doing when we in these particular moods, all right? Now, there's a study, and here's another one for you, by Dr. Cleve, C-L-E-V-E, Cleve Baxter, who did the science on the plants. And, he was doing the whole chopper plant, and then he had the whole things, the lie detector things hooked up to the plants, and the plants was tripping. They were like, oh, my God, this dude is about to kill us. Even when he would go out to lunch, and as soon as he get ready and thought about coming back to the laboratory, the plants would start tripping and start bugging out. Well, he did another study. He did a study on human DNA on how DNA and how your thoughts can actually affect DNA. Of course, they took DNA and they put it in a tube, and then they had people in the same room and then see if the emotions and thoughts could actually affect the DNA. They took a swab test, and then they were studying it. And then your positive emotion or whatever you was feeling will actually affect the swab, okay? So he said, okay, I tell you what, I'm going to take your DNA up to 350 miles away from you, and now show them the same image. So you got Ju all the way in Chicago. We got his DNA way over here in another part of the country. When Ju sees a positive image, his DNA changes at the exact same time as if the DNA was still connected to him. That should make you think twice about peeing in the toilet and sharing your stuff with people, okay, in public restrooms, all right? Because we saw earlier how...
That's called epigenetics? Is that what it's called?
Epigenetics is more classified as your thoughts are powerful to change your DNA.
Oh, okay.
So it is that, but then that's what they were studying. That's exactly, you're right. That's what they were studying. They were studying can thoughts affect DNA. So you're absolutely right. Yes, epigenetics, right? And great books to get on that, y'all, is Dr. Bruce Limpton. Very good, Biology of Belief, Spontaneous Evolution, and the Honeymoon Effect. All right, especially more on the honeymoon effect for those of you that want to get a little bit more into the science of relationships. We'll basically just dictate what happened to that honeymoon that was all good. It was all good just a week ago, you know what I'm saying? So real science. So get on that Cleve Baxter aspect because the human emotions, your emotions and what you think affects your DNA. And most importantly, man, when you understand that light conforms to DNA, and even when you are no longer physically in that space and the DNA is not in that space, this explains the reasons why you can walk into a space if you just pay attention When you walk into a space, you can feel the energy like, oh, man, it feels nice and calm in here. Other areas, you be like, I don't know about this, bro. I ain't using the bathroom up in here. I don't play that use the bathroom stuff anywhere. That's me. But, you know, you can just feel the energy because human DNA leaves an imprint in light called space because this whole spectrum is full of light, all right? Now, another aspect of this is to go a little bit deeper. A lot of the stuff actually, when it comes from past life traumas and the issues that I know a lot of people that's listening have, we all have them somewhere at some point in time, a lot of this stuff can actually stem from a past life. Yes, a past life. Your soul has memory because your soul is light. I'll send Rich another picture to put up on here. I got a picture of a human soul, me holding my dead daughter out the womb, and it's nothing but a ball of light right there. That was my spiritual initiation into the realm of the underworld. I'm Anpu, Lord, that's Anubis, Lord of the dead. I held the dead. I got the soul. That's what Anubis does anyway. So my cosmic initiation came by the way of holding the dead daughter, just to give you this message to understand light. You understand? So it resides, the pain can reside in a past life in the soul's memory because the soul is light. I'll give you an example. I did a past life regression on a woman. She was a German soldier in the past. No, she was American, but she was in Germany. She was a soldier in the past life. Smoked cigarettes profusely was smoking, right? And in this lifetime, she had severe asthma. All right, when I took her to the death scene and she saw that she was actually dying in the hospital as a white male who's now a black woman, okay, when she was dying in the hospital, when she came out of that particular scene physically in this incarnation, what we did not know until later was when she was walking down the street, she just so happened to be walking in front of somebody who was smoking a cigarette and it didn't trigger her asthma. This is a person who would see construction workers and smoke. She'd turn around and drive the other way because she had asthma that bad. But she noticed that the smell on the cigarette did not trigger her asthma. So she purposely started to engage herself in environments that actually had smoke, and her asthma wouldn't go off. And she called me excited like you wouldn't believe this. And I said, yeah, I would. Books to get on this, ladies and gentlemen, are books by Dr. Brian Weiss, who is a lead psychiatrist who stopped traditional psychiatry and got into past life regression because he had a client who had not possibly known that him and his wife had a son who had died and who was on the other side. She actually told him the whole experience by being in what we call the hypnotic state or the subtle trance, or which is really the infinite trance of light consciousness. When you're not necessarily stuck in just regular human consciousness, you're in a different phase of consciousness, all right? So you can get on that. And then I'm going to hit y'all with, it's a popular placebo study done in 1957, and the Prime Minister going to talk about these, in UCLA by Dr. Bruno Klopfer, Klopfer, where this one study was known that a guy who had cancer all over his body, size of lemons, tumors the size of lemon, he heard of a new drug called Krabiozen, Krebiozen. And he was like, he wanted some, so his doctor said, okay, man, I'm going to hook you up, you know what I'm saying? Hooked him up, and next thing you know, the cancer started melting like crazy. It was a placebo, though. It started melting like crazy. This dude was cancer gone, totally melted like snowballs, gone. Well, on the news, or a newspaper, he had read that, that crazy drug was a farce. It wasn't no good. His cancer came back. He went to the doctor. The doctor said, they made a mistake. They got a super duper strong batch that's coming, and I'm going to hook you up next week when they get in. Gave him a placebo full of water, nothing in there. Dude, cancer melted off again. Some time passed, and they said, that drug was definitely a farce. We told y'all that a while ago. 2 days later, he died. That's actually called nocebo. The nocebo effect is when you can think yourself to death. Excellent material to get on that. It's called You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza. All right? Now, the psychology of negative emotion is this, y'all. It can stop you from prosperity in different areas of your life. And I'll tell you how it creep in. It'll creep in like this. It creep in like, hey, my name is Anpu. I'm a Grammy Award artist, singer, and I'm a platinum singer, and money comes to me effortlessly and easy, and I am debt-free. And that sounds pretty good. But see, when you understand the law of attraction and the law of your thoughts, because your thoughts are magnetic, we see how your thoughts can affect DNA. when you put debt-free in there, that means that you're inviting debt into your reality. You understand what I'm saying? A lot of people don't. I test people with that all the time. What's wrong with that statement? Ain't nothing wrong with that statement because we can relate to that. Most of us can relate to it. So therefore, you think nothing is wrong with it. When you understand that you are debt-free, you understand what debt means? Debt means you have financial money working against you, okay? So in order for you to be debt-free, there has to be debt. Yeah, you got the abundance coming in, but now that means you're going to always have a constant battle in order for you to get debt-free. It will always be constant. You understand what I'm saying? So you got to watch little stuff like that. There is a study that's done by a French guy by the name of René Piach, P-E-O-C-H. And just type in this: baby chicks influence a robot. Very true. He basically took some baby chickens. Baby chicks, the first thing they see moving, they think is their mother. He kept them in a cage because he didn't want the robot to run over them. And the robot will determine where it go and turn and go left and turn right and all that stuff, stop and turn around based off a random number generator. The chick's willpower, baby little chickens, little pea brains, was so powerful that it influenced the robot to come towards the cage. Now, if a chick can do that, what do you think your human mind can do? I tell you what your human mind can do. Your human mind can actually start to create prosperity for yourself. And when I say prosperity, I'm just not talking money. I'm not talking that. So you visit us at IamProsperity.info. I promise you, you will see something. We got testimonials for days. $5,000 checks, people all of a sudden who had back pain start doing simple techniques of shifting their thoughts to positive emotions, and next thing you know, their back pain was instantly gone on sight by the power of their mind. All right? And that's at IamProsperity.info. And that's my little part on it, Rich, and Minister Ju going to hit y'all with the answer.
Okay.
All right.
That was amazing, by the way, Anpu. That was dynamic, man.
Thank you, bud.
I appreciate
it. Appreciate it. Indeed.
Absolutely. So I want to start off by saying this, man. Human consciousness is the God of this reality. Is how I like to term it. And this consciousness uses particles of light as the instrument to create the song. So consciousness is the composer, and light is the band, the drummer, the saxophone, the guitarist, etc., in order to create the phenomenon of life. So I want to start externally first and then work our way internally into the mind, as Anpu so brilliantly just laid out. You have it was a doctor by the name of Dr. John Anderson, because we want to talk about light and the spectrum of light. You have a doctor by the name of Dr. John Anderson who was studying migraines in patients and realized that when he applied blinking red lights into their visual spectrum, 72% out of the 100% of people who were tested, migraines actually went away. And the other 28% that were left over said that they felt significantly better. So we're dealing with the spectrum of light, right? The external spectrum that we can process via color, and the rainbow. There was another study done by Alexander Schaus. This is another doctor, Alexander Schaus. You can Google him. They did a study where they took inmates and put them in pink prison cells. And when they put these inmates in these pink prison cells, it actually reduced their muscle strength down in 2.7 seconds after the exposure to the pink cell that they were being held in. So they said, wow, this color is actually reducing the aggressive nature in the said prisoners in the jail. And so in a lot of prisons across the United States, they're coloring the walls and the bed sheets and the actual bars on the cells pink in order to minimize the aggressive nature of the inmates just through color, using the frequency of light, these different bands of light in the spectrum. There was another study done at Texas University where they took some athletes and exposed them to viewing the color red, right? And what they found was that it increased their strength by repetition, by constantly putting them in the same environment with the same frequency of color / light. It increased their strength by 13.5%. And it also increased the electrical activity in their arms by 5.8%. All right? Another study, because I said tonight I wanted to give people references, and Anpu did a beautiful job merging the science and giving the sources so people that can go study this thing. And so I said I wanted to be in the same vein. So it was another doctor by the name of Dr. John Ott who was studying chloroplasts, right, under regular sunlight. And what he found out was this chloroplast moved in this orderly fashion inside of the cells. So we're seeing how light, right, is having an effect psychologically and physiologically on the body. All right? And this is very, very important because when we start to understand that light is being produced from these quantum particles, photons, electrons, et cetera, how does this work when we learn how to subjectively go in and find the pilot light of the soul that exists inside of the human being and his consciousness to get into some quantum healing from a lot of these different ailments that we may have. So I want to talk about a couple cases that actually took place. It was a gentleman by the name, and this is in Discover Magazine, the September 2007 edition. It was a gentleman named John Matsky. He was a 30-year-old man. He ended up being diagnosed with malignant melanoma, a terrible skin cancer of the skin, right? And, you know, they told him that, hey, listen, man, you're not going to have very long to live because this thing starts to spread. People usually, 18 months tops, you might be able to be here. But outside of that, it's really nothing else that we could do for you. So they start telling this man to go take all these different drugs and go get these different treatments that they normally tell cancer patients to do. He declined. What this gentleman decided to do was to go into the mountains and take hikes. He decided to meditate. He decided to do visualization techniques of good, strong blood cells destroying the cancerous cells in his body. This is what he brought online. Now, we have to understand something, right? What he started to do was, especially when he got into the visualization aspect, also when he started going up into the mountains, because those mountains, when you get up in those atmospheres, you're around a lot of negative ions that produce your temperament changes. You have better mood. You feel better. Stress starts to be relieved. So all of these things are adding into this salad bowl in order to create this phenomenon that they call spontaneous remission. So this gentleman goes up into these mountains. He's doing his meditation. Then he goes into these visualization techniques. And anybody who's listened to Minister Ju on the previous shows with Brother Rich, I specifically talk about visualization and imagination being the key to unlocking the quantum consciousness and the God particle inside of you. So he's using his imagination to see these cells, right, actually healthy cells in his own body come around and take away these cells that are causing the cancer in his body and in his skin. So he did this for 30 days. He went back to Vermont. They hooked him up to the machinery. Not a trace of the malignant melanoma anywhere on this man. Not a trace. And the doctors couldn't believe it. He didn't go get any treatment through the regular procedures, right? And what we're trying to explain tonight is that this is the next frontier for humanity. When we understand how to process internal and subjective light, our whole reality and the way that we process this 3D dimension will change. And this goes from, like the brother said, all different forms of prosperity, to finances, to love, to health, et cetera, when we realize that the very spectrum that we're in is being regulated and basically created from the subatomic realm. You can't get anything physical in 3D matter without having these subatomic particles at the building blocks and the basis for it to even exist. So this is one case, right? And this is a side note. Let me show you how you start to see these correspondences when you get into the spirit of things. What they found out was that when they looked at this man, they said, well, it's something that they call white rings, right, that will develop around skin tumors, right, that actually will dissolve the negative bacteria, et cetera, that's causing the disease to fester and grow. They call these things white rings, but the actual medical term that they use for this is called a halo sign. A halo sign. This is what they call it in medicine. So we see all of these ascended masters and saints with these halos and these angelic beings with these halos, right? And then the medical science and the medical practitioners actually call these white rings that eat away on these what we would call disease states are actually halo signs. So what is the corresponding agents here? When we start talking about spirituality and getting into the inner workings of your consciousness, right, and we look back through the histories of our ancestors that talked about these type of things, right, we see that it's a correlation and that it's a correspondence going on here. Something is telling you that you have to get into your spiritual side, tuning into the internal parts of your nature in order to become master of the physical world on all levels, mentally, psychologically, physiologically, et cetera, et cetera. Another case, a lady named Alice Epstein. She was a mathematician, was diagnosed in 1985 with cancer in the kidneys. Well, they hit her with the news. She ended up having one of her kidneys removed, right? They told her that, listen, this cancer is starting to spread to your lungs, and Miss Epstein, you only have 3 months to live, man. What did she do? She went and got some treatment that dealt with anger, that dealt with the suppression of her own needs, because they say that anger and the suppression of your own needs, when you're giving to other people and you're not doing for yourself and putting yourself first, and you start to give off all of your resourceful energy to other people and you're depleting yourself, this leads to stress, which is what they say is one of the top contenders for these type of ailments, cancer, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when she started to go through these training processes that dealt with healing on a spiritual level, when she went back 6 weeks later, the tumors had shrunk. She went back a year later, and they totally disappeared without a trace, right? They told this woman that she had 3 months to live in 1985. 30-plus, 40-plus years later, this lady is 80-plus years old and still ticking right now. Simply because she decided to go inside, address the chemical reaction that she was creating and secreting in her brain via to her organs, which is an internal job that Anpu beautifully displayed, right? The moment that she decided to go in and address those feelings and those emotions, all of a sudden the disease started to deteriorate. These are actual documented cases of what they call spontaneous remission. So now, how does this all play into the quantum, Ju? Well, see, I explained before, right, and the biblical narrative describes it beautifully, the processes that actually happens neurologically in the brain. again, I want to reiterate it for people who just may be hearing me for the first time, that the biblical narrative is talking about states of conscious, neurological processes, physiological processes that go on inside of the body, inside of human consciousness. It is not a secular story, right? What happens is when you look at these narratives, you'll see that the individual or the state of consciousness that they call Christ was a fourth dimensional thinking being, right? The state of consciousness called Christ was going around doing spontaneous remissions on literally any and everybody that he ran into, right? People were coming with blood ailments, cured, skin ailments, cured. I mean, instantaneously. What these authors were trying to express to you is that once you get into that state of consciousness where you realize that light, right, is supreme and you're not subject to becoming trapped in the 3D reality and the limited ability of your senses to perceive this world, then you can start to do what looks like miracles, but really is a higher level of consciousness, okay? So you'll see when they do the study of mystics, right? They do these neurological studies on mystics. One of the leading doctors in this field is a doctor named Michael Persinger, who actually does tests, all kind of tests on the human brain and the neurological processes of mystics, of these spiritual phenomena and visions of God that people have when they go through these levels of transition and enlightenment. And what you'll notice is that inside of your brain, when you start to do things like meditation and intense prayer and intense visualization, which are all internal things in a repetitious order, the electrical currents in the brain begin to change. And this is when you hear terms like the fear of the Lord. You have to fear the Lord. What they're talking about is a structure in the brain called the right amygdala that is specifically dealing with fear and anxiety. But if you study these mystics and they get into their meditative practice, this is usually the first part in the limbic brain that actually goes off. And so you hear the story about the Buddha. You hear things like about the science of the Buddha in the Christ story, where the Buddha was sitting under the Bodhi tree and he had these visions of these women trying to seduce him and yada, 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 which in his mind was a negative act. Or you'll see the story about the Christ energy where he ran into the devil for 40 days and for 40 nights before he went out on his ministry. So what they were trying to relate to the masses was the process of enlightenment and what happens when you're going through these stages. You're going to go through, you have to go through the right amygdala in order to get to the left where it's total bliss. And this is why when you read in Matthew 4 and 11, you see that the moment that the state of consciousness called Christ banished the state of consciousness called the devil, you'll see then that it says, and then after he got rid of that particular entity, all the angels came upon to the Christ and started ministering to him, which is the positive and the elation and the joy and the light which resides in the left amygdala. So when these things come online and you start to practice these practices, right, the meditations, the prayers, the visualization, all of this is a quantum thing because it's something that's going on subjectively. You're appropriating subjective light in your inner being because guess what? When you're dealing with your imagination, where is the light coming from in those images? Because the hippocampus, albeit it does pull imagery from the past in order to give you a projection in that moment in time and space in order to recollect the thing, the hippocampus in the right hemisphere of the brain also has the potential, and it does create images that have not been rendered in your past. It's able to create things out of pure fancy. So where is this light coming from? It's subjective, right? So the moment we start to practice these things and get past the binding factor in the brain, right, and start to appropriate these principles, then we start to have things like spontaneous remission, just like these people did. So I mean, they got plenty of studies, man. It's a study where they did a, hold on, let me get it here. It was a study where it was an intercessory prayer study, and this was in the Alternative Therapies in Health and Medicine, the November issue, 1997, where they took some people and they said, listen, man, we want you to pray for these people, right? They didn't know, the people in the control group that were doing the praying for the other people, they didn't even know these people. They took them to the hospital. They let them meet these people, shook their hand all the time. They never brought to the awareness of the people or the patients in the hospital that they were being prayed for by these people. And what they found out was when they did the prayers for these people and had an image in their mind, right, all of a sudden these people's conditions started to change. They were more upbeat. Their anxiety levels went down. Some of their blood pressures were regulated properly. You start to see these things taking place, right? So prayer, meditation, et cetera, is a quantum thing. And it's a subjective thing that you're dealing with on the level of photons, electrons, et cetera. So for the most part, man, what I want to tell the people is that you have the ability to go inside of yourself, inside of your consciousness, and change and alter your physiological state through the power of your mind and the human imagination. And I want to share a story tonight real briefly. This is the first time that I ever talked about this on air. I have never even mentioned it on our radio show that we have. And it's only three people that know this story. It was 2013, and I went to my grandmother's house to visit her. And you know, my grandmother and my aunt, they own a 4-unit building on the west side of Chicago. And, you know, it's family orientated. At one point, my mom used to live in one unit, my aunties upstairs, my cousins upstairs, my grandmama's on the lower floor. So when my mom moved out, it was an older gentleman up in his 70s. His name was George. He moved in with his wife, Jean. And they used to own a tire shop right across the street from us. When I was a child, I used to go over there, put the air in my footballs and my basketballs. George wouldn't charge me for the air, et cetera. And he moved in. And so I was over there. I'll never forget. It was in October 2013. I was over at my grandma's house, and me and her were just sitting in there talking. She was watching CNN, and all of a sudden we just heard the door, boom. And it was Jean. It was George's wife. And so she came in and she said, call the ambulance, call the ambulance. And so I jumped up to run over there to see what was going on. And her husband, George, was sitting in his living room chair, completely unresponsive, no pulse. And the year prior, in November of 2012, I had picked up some practices, right, dealing with how to appropriate geometry, right, and subjective light inside of my own consciousness, right? I had one particular phrase that I had came across, along with others, but this is the one that I had mastered at that particular time. And so I said, well, the universal creator inside of you, Ju, is giving you an opportunity now to utilize it, because you got these tools and you never use them, right? You don't really know how this thing is how do you bring it to actualization, right, into reality? And so I started to repeat this particular phrase over and over again. I put my hand on his heart and my other hand on his forehead, and he started to cough profusely, right? And then his eyes started to roll in his head, and he slowly started to come back to consciousness. By this time, my grandmother was standing there watching in the door. My aunt was standing there watching in the door. His wife, Jean, was standing there watching me. The ambulance came in there watching me, and everybody was standing there in awe. They rushed George out of there. Long story short, about 2 weeks went past. He was in the hospital. They released him. He came back home. About another 2 weeks after that, he went back to the hospital because he had similar conditions. And they had 13 children, Rich. Jean and George had 13 children all across the United States, and they all were able to come to Chicago to see their father before he passed. So from that time in early October when the incident happened, George lasted for maybe about 30 more days. All of his children were able to come see him while he was still conscious to see him off. And I'm stating that story because I'm speaking from experience, the power of prayer, meditation, and getting into the mystical aspects of consciousness, right? Appropriating these concepts into your mind, because these type of things happen, right? And it's interesting because they show how these spontaneous remissions, right, when people actually appropriate this on their own, right, without the assistance of somebody who may be practicing these particular techniques, they say this is 1 in 60,000 to 1 in 100,000 is the rate that people have these spontaneous remissions. And so people see that and say, well, wow, that's not really a whole lot of people. But what I'm going to say is this. What that shows me is more on the lines of this, is that is the percentage of people who don't understand that their consciousness is the universal creator. They don't understand that. And they invest all of their trust and their faith and their belief into, whoever is prescribing them whatever it is they need to do. Just like the placebos. They go in there, they believe the doctor, they get this thing, and before you know it, they feeling better or it's gone, right? So you see it's based off your perception and what you're intaking in your consciousness that determines your state. So we got some things that we're working on, Rich. The last show that we had, I want to commend you for doing a marvelous job, man, on your platform. Because people hear these shows. I've gotten at least 10 calls from people. Brother just suffered a heart attack a week ago calling. Another person called with cerebral palsy. Another person called with schizophrenia. These people are calling us to get techniques that we utilize for other aspects dealing with the quantum in order to help them out in their personal situation. So this show was right on time based off the energetic flow and the current of people that came seeking us out from the previous show that we had. So again, man, you can visit us, man, theImaginationguru.com. Enter your email address there. We'll keep you updated on what we got going on. You can also reach us at www.myastrologycoach.com. We got a lot of stuff going on. We're going to be in Atlanta on July the 11th and the 12th. Matter of fact, the 10th through the 12th, we'll be there. We're having a book release. We got a book published together, myself and Noble Anpu, called Spiritual Wisdom for the 21st Century. We're having a workshop, and then we're going to do some ceremonial and meditative work at Stone Mountain. So we advise anybody who can get there to get there. Go to the website. You'll see that it's there under events, under seminars. It's there. So if you're interested, you can find us there. And that's pretty much my piece for this evening, Rich.
In terms of quantum healing, health, and, everybody wants to stay, be healthy, to enjoy life. You can have all the money in the world, the best looking apartment or woman, or if you're a woman, man, but if your health is bad, then, you can't really enjoy it. One of the things that I notice and that I'm sure people are curious about, and I want to get your quantum perspective on it, is why are some people able to eat whatever they want? I mean, they eat ice cream for breakfast and shit, soda for dinner with some chips or some shit like that. And they appear to be more healthy than some people who stay away from McDonald's, stay away from meat. I mean, it's a weird thing to see, but I'm sure everybody has seen this in their life where people with horrible diets appear to be healthy, live longer than some people who eat healthy. So what's the dynamic going on with that right there?
Well, everybody is built different, both physically and mentally, right? And then my honest opinion on it is this, man. We come down here for a purpose, right? And we're trying to expand the mind of God, Rich, and that comes through experiences, right? And you're going to come here and do that in some shape, form, or fashion. And inside of that mission, you're going to accomplish it, irregardless of how long you're here, right? And you came on time, you're going to leave on time, man. And but you don't want to be naive, right? Because you say, well, according to this, that, and the third. This will keep my body in more optimal condition. But here's the thing, man. Do you really want to live to be 150 years old? Do you really want to live to be 200 years old? That's a left brain type of orientated mind where you're not thinking that this thing is actually a spiritual thing. You see what I'm saying? Where you'll move on to a higher state of consciousness or a higher state of awareness outside of the locality of the physical body, right? And you know this is true because they got studies on outer body experiences where people are able to get outside of their bodies and have an experience, right, and tell you about a damn red pair of sneakers on a roof while their physical body is somewhere on the operating table, and then they come back and tell you, go up on the roof, it's a pair of red sneakers, and you go up on the roof and it's a pair of red sneakers. So we have to be mindful about these different states of consciousness that exist. We just can't write that off. And if we know these things exist and people are having these experiences, how can you write it off as if it's not another source or another purpose for human life outside of what you're going to eat now, what you're going to eat later, et cetera, et cetera, you know? So I'm not advising people not to eat healthy. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that it's much larger than that.
Yeah.
It's much larger than that.
You got to do what makes you happy. And see, that's the whole trick to this reality. It ain't even a trick. Do what make you feel good. People who eat what they want to eat, you know, you can see some effects. They may not be able to run as fast as the next person, but guess what? Their desire is not to run as fast as you. That's not their desire. You know what I'm saying? The whole thing is, see, a person who do what they want to is simply in a state of no limitation in the realm of what they have in their mind's eye. They have no limitation. When a person say, oh, I can't eat this and I can't do that, and again, I'm not knocking it, but you set yourself up for limitations. So in essence, when you do eat that something, if you happen to do it, you feel like you're going to get fat. You feel like you're going to get sick. You start to, oh, that's bad, and you start analyzing things as bad. The mere fact that you think it's bad, you're setting up this harmony inside of you. If you're in the mind frame of analyzing right and wrong, like I talked about earlier, people who eat what they want to eat, Rich, they're simply doing them, and they have absolutely no limits, and that's why they're outliving vegans and other people like that. You see what I'm saying? Because it's the thought, it's the power of the belief that's going into what they rocking with.
Now, earlier, I'm glad you kind of, and I guess we're kind of closing out with one or two more questions. I'm glad the approach you took is one that took me a while to understand, and that you kind of went into our multidimensional nature when you dealt with certain emotions that you have inside you, causing you to react to certain ways in your environment. It may make you crave a certain food, or it may make you start a certain fight with your spouse or your significant other to get that hit, you know what I'm saying, to get that hit that it needs. One thing I want to touch on is why, could you touch a little bit about, with that being said, in our emotions causing certain things to happen, what's up with, as far as health, what's up with black women and fibroids? I knew a lot of women in my life, my sister being one, who I know who have had problem with fibroids. If you ask a doctor, they're not going to say nothing. They'll say they don't know, but for some reason, black women at an alarming rate get fibroids. Is there something going on with the emotions within this culture that is causing black women to get fibroids at an alarming rate?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. However, I will also still say that, again, a lot of things, even within black women, I think a lot of cases are still on an individual basis. But I guarantee if we do a collective case study, we can easily find a common denominator. And I think the common denominator is not solely going to be the emotional aspect. I think there's a good chance we'll find a culprit inside of the environment, known as maybe vaccines, known as birth control, things that they going to the doctor and it's just not necessarily agreeing with the DNA of a person, and it could definitely be on purpose. It's one of the first books I ever read in my life. Coming up the joint was emergent viruses, Ebola and the AIDS joint, when the doctor actually said how they actually created certain things and contaminated the New York City blood bank with it on purpose. One of the first things that ever opened my eyes up. Anyway, on the emotional aspect, Rich, for sure. You know what I mean? We got a lot of issues there in that department where we'd really be surprised, and maybe one day we can get into the quantum sex aspect of orgasm and more into the Taoist arts and Tantra, one of these shows. But a lot of us, men and women, we carry emotional trauma. One of my favorite polls that we did on our page on Facebook was we took a poll and we asked men and women, and I love women because I love women, but women just answer and keep it 100. And I asked men and women this question: have you ever had sex with your partner and it was like, the vibration between y'all just wasn't on the same page, but since y'all been together for so long, you may just be horny or whatever, you do it, but afterwards you experience some type of genital discomfort, and I'm not talking about no disease. It's not disease. And what I was talking about, I was getting at was vibrational dissonance, where basically y'all ain't on the same page energetically. She getting on your nerve, he getting on your nerve, whatever. But y'all still, just get along to, go along just to get along, and you having this non-conscious sex is what it is. And since that energy field is still there of negativity, it gets trapped inside of a woman, especially if a man is ejaculating his negative emotion inside of a woman. A lot of men, to be truthful with you, aren't cultivated enough, and they have their own emotional issues, dipping in other women. Not that you can't, but you bring her energy with you as well, and it's just a big collage of mess. And then when a woman who is the ultimate receiver, you wonder why she gets super duper cranky on her menstrual cycle, is because she got some emotional disturbances that 9 times out of 10, and I'm not blaming the men. Hear me closely, y'all. What I'm really saying is, in the equation of mathematics, in balance, we just want to see a positive and a negative. I'm not saying positive state and negative state in this case. I'm just simply saying balance, yin yang. So what happens is you may come home from work and vibration ain't up and you just want to nut so you can go to sleep. This is a stressful thing and on an energetic level that you actually interjecting inside of the woman. So there's a whole bunch of factors. There's a lot of things that stop women from I was studying some on YouTube, and y'all check it out. It's called Source Tantra. White guy, Charles Muir, and his students. One of his students was they had a class, right? And he had a thing where they do G-spot massage on a woman. All right, so they G-spot massage on a woman, and the whole thing is set up where you're supposed to just cater to the woman, right? And draw the bath, chocolates and everything, make her, let her relax. But you'd be surprised what a woman is thinking in the sexual act. One woman, and the student really just flat out admitted it, that, when she was about to hit orgasm, she made him stop because she started thinking about a time that her father molested her. See, a lot of people, man, have experienced sexual dissonance when it's low vibrational sex, a lot of emotional issues and things that's taken in. And for the woman particularly, because she receives a lot of energy in her womb naturally, that's a lot of stuff that, a lot of, for lack of a better word, and not from her, I'm just saying, let's just say low-level frequency stuff has been interjected inside of her, and thus she can also, through other experiences, equate, if her father called her ugly or whatever the case may be, she will equate that with her sexual organs. May think her man cheating on her and he dipping around. Now he gave me a yeast infection. You ain't had this until you start messing with these other women. I've been through that myself. I'm speaking from experience. You know what I'm saying? And guess what? I'll be cool. Other women be cool. But it absolutely can be just because you thought that was the case, it became that. That's very real. You can think yourself into disease. We talked about that, called nocebo, think yourself to death as well. But we got a lot of factors, Rich. A lot of factors.
And I want to add, and I know we're running low on time, man. I just want to say this real quick. And I said this before on a previous show. I'm going to say it again. Self-talk creates reality.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Indeed.
You got these women right, who are in these relationships, and a lot of them don't really want to be in them anymore for whatever reason. For whatever reason. And I just had a conversation with a young lady 2 days ago dealing with this imagination work, and it got into this subject matter that we're talking about right now. And she's with a guy, doesn't really want to be with him, still has sex with him. This thing is going back and forth, right? Back and forth. What happens is you're saying internally, I don't want to be with this guy. And then you commit an act that's contrary to that internal dialogue. The body in the quantum is picking up on feelings, emotion, and imagery. So what happens is the body starts to conform to the quantum command of the feeling that says, I don't want to be with this person. Now you start to create these fibroids, right, in a specific area on the body that deals with your ability to reproduce, to have pleasure, et cetera, with this gentleman or these gentlemen, whoever. So we have to be careful because our bodies will respond to the self-talk and the inner dialogue that we're having. And you'll be surprised. A lot of times when I do these consultations with women who call to have a consultation with me about whatever situation that they're having, a lot of women have been molested, Rich.
That's right.
At young ages. Like this is not uncommon. This is very common. The more you get into counseling and talking to people, they experience this type of trauma sometimes at 12 years old, 10 years old, by a perverted uncle, et cetera. And then they lodge this memory in their hippocampus of fear, pain, disgust, not good enough, not pretty, being abused. They lodge this in their tender minds in these specific regions in their brain, and then these chemicals continuously are being released. They have resentment for men because of earlier circumstances that these engrams that they never had removed by replacing it, or better yet, talking it out through some type of therapy where they can release that particular stress hormone or whatever chemical is being released, so that now they can create a clean slate or clean sheet of paper in these particular regions in their brain, and then you have these things happen inside of their body. So, this thing it's healing has to take place, and we have to know that it begins with thought. That has to be the most first initial place that we go to look for remedy is in the dominion of consciousness, and know that life itself is acting as all of the ingredients and all of the seasoning that goes on the food that you eat in this life. And when you understand that, you can make it as spicy as you want, you can make it as dull as you want, you can make it as sweet as you want. It's your choice. There's a zillion different spices. It's have it your way. You know?
That's right. And a real quick sentence, real fast. I know a sister who was engaged to a dude. They've been together for like 7 years, right? And they was engaged for over half that. Ended up breaking it off. Never got married. Got to a point, obviously, where she didn't like him that much. Didn't want to have sex with him, but was still doing it because that was the normal thing to do. She developed ovarian cysts. And I had to show her how, wait a minute, you didn't want to do that with him, and that's where it came, and blew her mind when she looked at the timeline of the relationship, because this relationship's been over for years now. But when she looked at the timeline when she had cysts versus, in comparison to what the frequency was like in her relationship, like the Prime Minister said, she was saying, I don't like it, but she'd end up doing it. She sent the command to her womb, man, and it started to develop cysts on it. Like, wait a minute, I thought you didn't want to. I started to shut down for you. You got to be very careful on what you think.
Wow, those are some deep stories, man. I definitely appreciate y'all coming on the show again. And, I really appreciate the quantum talk, because we live in a time where there's so much information readily available that everybody, you know, it's the war of who's right and who's wrong. Oh, this is right, that's wrong, no, that's right. As far as quantum, it all could be right, but all we're saying is that the root of all of this is consciousness. So you could believe what you want to believe as far as, you know, whether it could be food. That's why, I talked to you before, and, you know, we have this mentality in this world where it's either this or that. And when you get deep and deep into it, you discover that it's this and that. So it can be food that's causing certain diseases, but behind the food, there's certain emotions attached that's causing you to crave a certain type of food. So I always appreciate the quantum talk. Once again, just in case they missed it, leave your contact info so if they want to hit you up for consultations or whatever, they can get at y'all.
Indeed, man. You know, man, we appreciate you, Rich, in this aspect, man. Me and Ju talk about all the time, man. When you get into the quantum talk, this kind of conversation is going to guarantee to help you grow new brain cells, and that's learning, and that's life for sure. Right. But you can get us at myastrologycoach.com. Just drop your email address over there. The Imagination Guru was Minister Ju putting together some phenomenal work over there. So the Imagination Guru, you got to make some finish touches is over there, but still go there. It's up and running, and drop your email address over there. And over at IamProsperity.info if you want to learn the law of attraction. Real simple techniques. IamProsperity.info is over there. And our phone number is 267-403-4078, man. That got me hyped because Minister Ju says something. But there's one more study y'all can get into, man. Just go over to Wikipedia or just Google retroactive intercessory prayer and look up Dr. Leonard Lee Bovici, Leibovici, one of the most phenomenal studies I ever heard, and nobody really talks about the other aspect where almost 3,500 people was prayed for, but they was prayed for in 90 and 96. Half of the people who got prayed for came home faster, didn't die as much, and they broke their fever faster. But the kicker is this, ladies and gentlemen, they didn't get prayed for into the year 2000. They were in the hospital in 1990, 1996. Nobody's talking about the phenomenon called the intelligence of light that is very aware that the people were going to get prayed for 6 to 10 years in the future, and they got better. Next time, maybe we get into that intelligence of light. But hit us up, theimaginationguru.com, myastrologycoach.com, and IamProsperity.info.
And the phone number is 267-403-4078. Again, 267-403-4078.
And what Brother Rich said is, everybody is right and wrong at the same time. That's what you got to get into. The mere fact that it exists, and this is the only thing, this is the test. The litmus test is this. If you believe in God and supreme intelligence, if you see it, therefore it exists. Other people believe in it anyway. It ain't like you can remove it, but the mere fact that it exists makes it a reality. In your reality, that's how you know about it. Therefore, it is right. It may not be your cup of tea and right for you, but it is right because it exists. And the power exists.
And the power, and here's the deal to close it. But here's the kicker, and I don't want people to get carried away with this concept. It is about what you choose to observe. That's it. All of it is there. All of it is a potential. All of it can exist. All of it does exist. However, the only thing that's important is for you, the individual, to decide what part of it you're going to observe to make it a reality in your life. That's the most important part.
That's right.
That's right.
Indeed. And on that note, this is Brother Rich. Check out the website undergroundrailroadnet.com. If you're on the YouTube homepage, don't forget to hit that donate button. Donate to Brother Rich and Underground Railroad. And we are signing out. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.